We really are depending on you to be successful in your job, because if you're successful in your job, the company that hired you will want to hire more people in your situation. And that will help more people at the shelter get out. And then the more people that get out of the shelter, the more people can get off the street and into the shelter.
Welcome to Acton Line, a product of the Acton Institute for the Study of Religion and Liberty. I'm Eric Cohn, executive producer. In today's episode, I talk with Father Marko Janovic and Rebecca Fifelski, who together run Better Way Detroit, a nonprofit working with the homeless population of Detroit, Michigan. Better Way Detroit engages, pays, feeds, and counsels homeless persons, and connects them to services for housing, medical and mental health care, and stable employment opportunities. In return, Better Way Detroit participants help community organizations like St. Vincent de Paul Detroit and Detroit Goodfellows serve the underserved. During the summer months, they also help clean Detroit parks and neighborhoods of trash and overgrowth to help make them safer. Through their efforts, Better Way Detroit participants inspire community spirit, pride of ownership, and confidence in the dignity of work. While serving as participants, they also mentor them so that they can best help them find permanent employment after their service. You can find additional resources in the show notes for this episode, as well as find previous episodes of Acton Line on our website at acton.org/actonline. And if you like this program, you can help us reach even more listeners by sharing it with a friend and leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We welcome your comments as well. Acton Line is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Father Marko Janovic and Rebecca Fifelski, welcome to Acton Line.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Wonderful to be here. Thank you.
So let's start. Tell us about Better Way Detroit, how it came to be, and what you guys do.
It just started with me having, an idea of recruiting men that are experiencing homelessness in the city of Detroit and giving them the opportunity to work for pay. So we started off with them cleaning the parks. At that time, the mayor of Detroit, Mayor Michael Duggan, had a Adopt the Parks program. And so there was a great need with the parks to clean it. And I began recruiting, again, homeless men that are experiencing homelessness. I was doing this once a week, spending the majority of the day with them. And I found it very beneficial. Like in the beginning, it was all about money. They would ask me, how much money are you going to give me? Then at the end of the day, when I asked them, what was your experience? It was never about money. It was, we really enjoyed this opportunity to get out of the toxic homeless culture. They appreciate the opportunity to work outside, to use their hands, to use their muscles, to do something good for the community. That made a few men mention, and they just enjoyed seeing families children at the park, and them knowing that they contributed to the cleanliness of the park, warmed their hearts. So I did this beginning, it was, to be honest, from my pocket. And though I did have a few friends assist me with some money. And then I asked a good friend of mine, who's the former president of Better Way Detroit, Michael Kotwick, wonderful man. He's been in the production business for over 30 years, and he created a video. He visited me 2-3 times while I was at work with the men experiencing homelessness. And then created a beautiful video, which is on the website. And then we shared it with the Archbishop Alan Vigneron. He was touched by the video and gave us a donation. And then from there, we gained some publicity. With that publicity, I was able to gain some more donations. And with that with the donations, I was able to do this now multiple times a week. And we began to go beyond simply cleaning parks. We were cleaning many of the blighted neighborhoods. And that was a good experience. Many of the longtime residents in these neighborhoods were so grateful to the men that were working with Better Way Detroit. So they didn't. It was a very contrasting experience to their time in the shelter. When they're at the shelter, they were just merely recipients of socks, gift cards, food, hygiene products. But here, they're contributors to society. They're contributors. They're givers. They're helping the community, and so the residents were just showing them so much great respect and gratitude for their hard work, offering them lunch, thanking them. Thank you, sir, so much for the work you did for us. And that just really made them feel good. I could tell they expressed to me that they just felt really good about this experience. It definitely boosted up their morale, because again, that homeless culture is toxic. It is greatly depressing and increases one's stress and anxiety. So then the next step was, wow, these gentlemen can work. And mind you, I had a few women, but again, probably over 95% men. And I said, these men can work. Let's find them jobs. So I started to help them find work in restaurants, speaking with restaurant owners, and they were very kind and generous and offering them opportunity to work as dishwashers. One as a cook. One of them, I remember, got a cook. I was connected with some small business owners in construction business, cleaning. There was another it's called Hollingsworth Company. They were excellent to me in hiring the men experiencing homelessness. And so with that, it was, so this Better Way Detroit program was really developing. But while it was definitely a learning curve, I learned a lot of the men, particularly guys that are coming out of prison, things that maybe us who have been in the workforce for 20, 30 years, it's common sense to us, maybe not so much for them. So what I realized is they needed mentoring. The men needed some guidance, support as they began their new job. Then COVID hit, and I was not able to have 7 homeless men in my SUV crunched up anymore. And so we were shut down literally shut down. But during that time, we were grouped, and we really, with our board, discussed new ways and how to employ the men of Better Way Detroit. And we created a newfound relationship with St. Vincent de Paul. So St. Vincent de Paul had a great, great need. They, especially after COVID, they had received so many donations, especially, during the COVID shutdown. Everybody was decluttering, it seemed like. And so they needed help for sorting all these donated items. And so that's what we have now. We had the men and now women of Better Way Detroit, because now we work with more women than we did before. And we have to thank our new operations manager, Kiana Bates, for that. And now they work at St. Vincent de Paul. They sort items and tag them for St. Vincent de Paul. Also, we we collaborate with Goodfellas. This is a very well-known nonprofit in the city of Detroit. They've been around since, at least over a century. And again, they package, sort for Goodfellas. And also we've begun to re-engage the city with blight work. Also, recently we had the men do beautiful landscaping work at a Catholic school in Northwest Detroit. And most importantly, we continue to help the men and women find full-time employment. And we're doing very well in that regard. So I'll stop there. I could keep going.
Sure. How long have you been in Detroit?
I've been a priest here in the city of Detroit for 6 years. So the first 4 years were in the suburbs, and then the first 4 years, and now for the past 6 years in the city.
What was the impetus for this idea? Did you have a lot of interaction with the homeless community in Detroit that really showed to you the need for a program like this? And for our listeners, many of whom are here in Michigan, but are all over the country and some all over the world, talk to us a little bit about the homelessness problem in Detroit that kind of you're experiencing and are working to with these people to help get them into your program and then get them work experience and then gainful employment. So talk about where you got the idea from and the general lay of the land in Detroit right now.
Once I began living in Detroit, I began to encounter homeless more so on a regular basis. I was living at a parish with a gentleman named Norbert Kidd, one of the most saintly men I've ever met in my life. And he had been very engaged with the homeless population for years, decades. And so when I was living with him at this parish, he didn't live there. He volunteered there. I was living with two other priests at this place that Norbert Kidd volunteered with. But there would be a lot of homeless gentlemen or homeless visiting the parish. So I encountered a lot of them. And I remember one specific significant encounter. A gentleman came to me during a very, very cold winter, asking for long johns. And of course, I'm going to give him these long johns. Yet I told him, how about this? I have some work to do in the church. Could you help me? And I'll pay you for the work for the work you do. So we worked together in the church, moving some items, cleaning about an hour and a half. And during that time, I got to know him. I built a relationship with him. I found out he was living in an abandoned house, that he had been in prison for almost 30 years, that he had been taking all sorts of prescription drugs, particularly for his mental illness. I discovered a lot about him during that, as we were working together. And then once after that hour and a half of work, I gave him money for the long johns. And so I saw that how this, instead of just simply giving him a handout, this opportunity of this exchange between me and him, of you work with me and I'll pay you, brought about such good fruit of me understanding what's his situation, truly what his needs were. And so with that, the next step was I was able to connect him with a counselor that works at a homeless agency. We were able to help him finally obtain state-funded housing, and he no longer had to live in this terrible, terrible abandoned house. And he eventually, after living there maybe 3-4 months in this new apartment, he passed away. But I was able to I did his funeral. It just that really touched me, and I just saw the need. We've got to look at our approach to those who are suffering from homelessness, a different approach than just simply handouts. And definitely that experience was a very important experience for me in taking this to the next level.
Becca, tell us about how you became involved with Better Way Detroit and what you do with the organization.
So about 12 months ago, which would have been in early 22, I retired from work, and I had always wanted to be more involved with community in the church. And so I talked with the deacon at my church in Northville, which is a suburb of Detroit. And I said, hey, how can I get more involved? And I thought he would recommend something at our parish in my neighborhood. But he said, hey, we have a priest in Detroit, and he's running an absolutely great mission, but he needs help. And with your experience in industry, you could really bring a lot to the organization and help them out and keep it running and help as many people as possible. So I connected with Father Marco and the then President Mike, and started volunteering. I would meet with the groups at St. Vincent de Paul, and we would work together. And so I could get to know the clients and the participants, get to know our operations manager. And then after a little while, the existing board asked me to join the board. And then the existing president had some health issues, so they asked if I could take over as president of the board. So that kind of got me more involved, and it's been a great learning experience.
Father Marco, you had mentioned earlier the toxicity of the homelessness culture that exists in Detroit. Talk about that. What is it like? What is life day in and day out like for people who are experiencing homelessness, and what are the challenges that culture puts up against them in trying to escape from that trap?
See, definitely the drugs are 24/7 available. Whenever my experience is, wherever shelters are, there's drug dealers and drug. So if you're, and many of the men have some experience, have backgrounds of drug addiction. So when they come to the shelter, immediately stress and anxiety increases. You have rules. You have to deal with various personalities that you're living with. Some of them are very aggressive, rude. You want to escape. So definitely, no one wants to be in a shelter. No one. That's definitely the sentiments of everyone across the board that are in the shelters. So that definitely is those are the things that come to mind when I think of the toxicity of culture, of the homeless culture.
Well, one of the things I've noticed along that vein in talking with people that are living in the shelters is, if you have a shelter, you have a large collection of independent people in one place, there has to be rules. And they are trying to reduce the stress, and they are trying to counsel people on how to get back into a working environment and home ownership. And so there's a lot of rules. You have to be home at this point. You have to eat dinner at this point. You have to attend certain classes. And as grown adults, sometimes that can be a little bit stressful when you're used to a little more freedom and not kind of being treated as a child. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's kind of what you have to do to keep a shelter safe, but that's difficult for adults.
What was an interesting thing was you find men in the shelters that want to work. For example, they will pass out handbills, for example, or people will come to the shelters and offer them opportunity to work. Yet, what they've told me is people have only paid them like $5 an hour for their work, or they made them do some very to say the least, distasteful jobs. And so they really appreciate when we would offer them opportunity for pay, because they were felt respected. They were paid at least minimum wage.
Fed, we provide lunch.
Yeah, we provide lunch,
counseling.
Mentoring. Yes.
It's a very respectful environment.
Yeah. We try to build a brotherhood, sisterhood amongst the others.
How prevalent do you find instances of mental illness among the community? You talked about drug addiction being a problem. Do you find people with either untreated or undiagnosed mental issues also show up? And how do we serve those people in the best possible way?
What I've found out is, what I've experienced is people, struggle with mental illness. Yeah, if they are receiving the proper care, definitely from the medical professionals, but also having that. This is why it's important for we're adamant about having mentors for each of our Better Way Detroit clients. That mentor, that person you can rely on, talk to about your struggles is important. But just, there are some forms of mental illness that truly can stop someone from working. But we found there are many forms of mental illness that still give one an ability to work well. And it helps them cope with their mental illness by working.
Yeah. In clinics that I've attended on education on homelessness, I've heard the statistic that as many as 80% of the people that are in homeless shelters are experiencing emotional issues and possibly even being, treated by a doctor. Now, in my experience with our clients, I haven't seen that high level of occurrence, and it possibly could be because, first of all, I'm not a trained doctor, so I can't really recognize emotional issues. The people might also already be on medication. But then also, we're working with people that are at shelters and have been referred by the shelter. So they're kind of helping us screen. And then the other thing is we definitely have experience. We've had people in our program where we say, okay, we can see there's an emotional issue here, and we can actually work with the state. We have a partner that works for the state, and they'll help us get medical care for that person. They have particular jobs that they'll line people up with. If we have people that we see have cognitive issues, the state has particular employment opportunities. So we do work with partners, and we also work with clinics. When we see somebody cannot function in their job and we know it's drug related, we'll try to get them into rehab. And so we've had a few instances of that.
The social scientist Arthur Brooks, I think he may have been the first one I heard talk about this idea of earned success and the importance of earned success to those of us in the working world. And the point that Arthur would always make is, you can find lawyers who make, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year and are miserable because they don't find meaning and reward in the work that they're doing. And you can find people who make what the average person may consider to be just a very small sum of money, but they find the work that they do meaningful and impactful, and that it makes a difference. And the way that we feel about our work as a result of that affects the way that we feel internally about ourselves. Have you seen that phenomenon in getting the opportunities for these people who have experienced homelessness to work, to earn some success, and for many people perhaps to get back entered into the workforce? What impact have you seen that has on the people who experience your program?
Yeah.
Well, I know one example would be one of our clients that has been in permanent employment now for a year. So she was in our program last summer, and then she was able to, we helped her get a position at a company in light manufacturing. And at her year anniversary, we kind of had a little reception and said, hey, you get an award. You've been in full-time employment for a year. And as she put it, she said she was just so thrilled to be in a stable environment where she could work and she could pay her own bills. And she felt so valued. She goes, I didn't know I could even get to a point in my life like this. And she goes, and I wouldn't have got there without you guys giving me the confidence and the love to get to that point.
I thank you. That's true. I think I remember recall a gentleman early on, one of the first ones that I helped obtain a job, and he was in his 60s, and I helped him get a job as a dishwasher. And I recall him asking after a couple of weeks at work at his new job. I said, "So how you doing?" And then he says, "I'm in heaven. I wake up every day, go take the bus, arrive at work at 9 a.m., leave work 5 p.m., take the bus home, take a shower, watch a little TV, go to sleep, do the same thing again. I'm in heaven." He doesn't have to, why heaven? Because he doesn't have to depend on anyone, doesn't have to, like he did before. I mean, we all have to depend on each other, but like he did before, his life doesn't carry so much uncertainty. His anxiety level has decreased, stress level. He enjoys his work environment. He works hard. I think everyone appreciates the opportunity to work. You could see in their body just some more energy in their body. That's what I said when they start working. Even a smile, you see it in their body, a change when they're working.
Yeah, I remember a story that Arthur Brooks had told about, I think it was an organization in New York where the gentleman who had experienced homelessness that he was describing was doing janitorial work, I think, for a school, and Arthur's talking to him. And what he proudly showed Arthur was this text from his boss saying, like, there'd been some kind of an accident, he needed to clean something up. And the text he got from his boss was, "I need you." And he said that was so incredibly meaningful to him, that feeling of being needed, of being not just helping out, but knowing that the person he was working with needed him, that he had an important role there. I can only imagine the kind of a personal and spiritual fulfillment that you get from that, especially if it had been lacking from your life for so long, which I imagine has to be true for people who've experienced homelessness, like the kind of people that your mission is working with.
And another thing I received from the men is they thank me that I have confidence in them that they can work, because they don't sometimes think they have confidence that they can truly be employed. So that's and I remember a gentleman who had an offense, a criminal record that just held him back from obtaining employment. And he kind of gave up. He just tried this place, tried that place. And then we helped him find a job, and he was like a new man, liberated.
And we also try to reinforce that dependence on each other as part of our program. When we tell the people in the program we really are depending on you to be successful in your job, because if you're successful in your job, the company that hired you will want to hire more people in your situation. And that will help more people at the shelter get out. And then the more people that get out of the shelter, the more people can get off the street and into the shelter, because that's the first step, is get off the street. And but a lot of times there isn't space in the shelters. So we tell our clients, hey, if you're succeeding in getting out of the shelter, that helps somebody get off the street and on the path to healing, because it is a long path. It's not one step. It's many steps, and they're part of that, getting everybody along that path.
Have you found it difficult at all to identify employers who are willing to take on some of the people that you work with? And if that is indeed the case, what would you like people in positions out there to make hiring decisions to know about the people that you work with and the opportunity that they present for those employers? What would be helpful in breaking down some of those barriers that prevent employers from engaging in that kind of second chance hiring?
One thing I like what we do now is we have this group. So so let's say you have a group of 6, 7, and they will stay with us for about 4 weeks. So we get to know them. We build trust. We get to know where they're at regarding their ability to work. What are some things life adjustments they need to make. So there is a kind of a vetting process. We try to vet as much as we can. And also we assign them a mentor. So once they begin working, it's very important that they have somebody assigned. We call it a mentor that they can talk to, that can assist them with any challenges they have at the workplace, whether it's with their fellow employees or the employer. Yep. So they're getting somebody that's been working at least 3-4 weeks and working with us. So by the time he or she begins their employment at this new place, full-time employment, they've been working already. So we have somebody that's prepared. We've prepared somebody to begin entering the workforce.
Yeah. And I would say it's not that hard finding companies that are willing to hire, because in the economy we're in right now, people really need employees. It's harder finding a good fit that is permanent and getting people to stay in that position where they don't run into problems with childcare or transportation or just emotional issues. And so that I would say is our problem isn't finding its employers. If we had to say, okay, what would I ask of an employer that is working with us? I would say you have to, first of all, understand what situation you're getting into. This isn't just your normal situation of hiring somebody who's, had normal life situation. That, I would ask that the employer be a little bit more patient, be a little more accommodating of someone having to handle personal issues, and know that this is a service, that this isn't just for the employer to have an employee. It's, understand you're giving a little to the community here to help out a problem. And the employers that go in with that mindset, that they're a little more patient, a little more understanding, willing to work together and stay in constant communication with us, because that way the mentor can kind of coach them through issues. Maybe if they're having, some disagreements at work, help them get through that without just quitting. So, long-term engagement, understanding that goes a long way.
I think that dovetails into the next question I wanted to ask you, which is what are the biggest challenges you face in furthering the work of Better Way Detroit?
I'll be honest. I think funding. Yeah. Funding is our biggest challenge.
Because we're in a situation where we're actually paying, we provide salary to homeless people. Now it's only 4 weeks at a time, but if you're going to provide a salary to somebody, if you're going to let somebody have the dignity of work, you have to follow the laws of unemployment insurance. You have to pay taxes. You have to. Yeah. So the funding for that, and we have to have an operations manager that manages. It trains them on the job and is there setting up the cohort, setting up the mentors. It's a pretty structured program, and so funding. But the number 2 is then, of course, volunteers. We have volunteers that make lunch for us, so we don't have to buy food. We have volunteers that are just on site to provide more support and help, build a loving environment where everybody gets attention.
Yeah, A Better Way Detroit was founded on being very thrifty.
Being very what? Sorry.
I said Better Way Detroit was founded on being very thrifty, and we've maintained that being very, very thrifty. But I could not, when I was doing this program in the beginning, we had almost zero administration costs. Yeah, and with me now being a moderator of 5 parishes in a school, the Archdiocese of Detroit is going through a process of changing a model of how we do parish life. We adopted this family of parish model. So, my time is gravely limited in how much I can give to Better Way Detroit, though I'm involved in it every week, but it's very limited. So in order for us to take it to the next level, we needed an operations manager who's been fantastic, absolutely fantastic, helping us take it to the next level. And that's what it's all about, continuing to develop, take it to the next level, be innovative, be open to new ideas. Then that's very important for the spirit of Better Way Detroit.
I think here would be a good question to begin to wrap up on. What is that next level? What is next for Better Way Detroit? Where do you want to go now?
Yeah, so our goal is like one of the changes we made this year is instead of having a 3-week program, we have a 4-week program. And what that allowed us to do is get to know each person better and get them in a job that they would, stay in longer. But in making the program 4 weeks now, instead of helping maybe 85 to 100 people in 1 year, we're helping like 60 people in 1 year. But the theory was more quality over quantity. The next level would be if we can run 2 cohorts at the same time. If we can have the women at Goodfellow or St. Vincent de Paul, either one, helping with the clothing and developing that store so they can provide for the community. And then the men at Goodfellows packaging boxes, or having another group out doing community service, doing neighborhood cleanup. If we can do multiple cohorts, we can do more community service as well as get more people in our program. So, and then the other element is additional shelters. Like we're working with 3 shelters in Detroit right now. If we could also work with a shelter in Pontiac, we could also help the communities out, in around Detroit. So that would be the point, and help more people that are experiencing homelessness and get out to other shelters and services in the area.
For people who are interested and want to learn more, or perhaps want to make a contribution or volunteer or get involved somehow, how do they find you? How do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, the best way is our website, betterwaydetroit.org. We have an email. We can always be contacted by email. I check the email pretty much every day. And then, so I would Google Better Way Detroit and it'll come up and you can get to our website. And from the website, it's kind of nice too, is you get the history of the organization, you get videos, you can hear from Father Marco, why he started the organization. And then also there's a video on mentoring, because a lot of people, maybe they work full time and they can't come down on site. But mentoring is a 30-minute call, maybe even a 15-minute phone call, maybe even just 3 texts a week. You know what I mean? So you could do mentoring remotely. You could do it from anywhere and still make a big difference in the life of a person. So I always say, hey, if you can't come on site, if you can't cook food or drive, just make a phone call and you'll be making a difference.
We'll include a link to your website, betterwaydetroit.org, in the show notes for this episode. Father Marco Jonovic and Rebecca Fifelski, thanks so much for joining us today on Acton Line.
Thank you.
Thank you.
God bless you all. Thank you.
As always, thank you for listening. Our team loves putting this podcast together for you. It's encouraging to hear from our listeners. Feedback is incredibly important to us because it lets us know what you'd like to hear more of, including the kinds of topics you're interested in most. If you have comments, feedback, or ideas for a show topic or interesting guest, you can email our team at producer@acton.org. Until next week, for Acton Line, I'm Eric Cohn.